What to do if you have too many slaves in your capital? They are working in your mines, on your fields, building roads, but over time they might be dangerous. Because of the high unrest, they reduce the loyalty, which might lead to revolts. Of course, one of the solutions could be to send one of your armies to the region and then they will decrease the unrest. It might work for some time, but in general, soldiers are needed to conquer new lands and fight your enemies. So the other solution is to distribute your slaves into regions where there is less slaves. For example, in this region, there are only 2 of them. So I can send some of them to different places. But how to do this? If you play on the easy difficulty, each round, 1 slave will be distributed to a different region. On balanced difficulty, each round there is 50% that 1 slave might be distributed to a different region. And if you play on higher difficulties, the automatic relocation never happens. Also, it's good to know that this automatic relocation works only if you have more than 2 free slots available in your region. So what else we can do? You can use your regional decisions. And sometimes you can find a disperse slaves decision. You can play it on the region where you have between 4 to 50 slaves and there is at least 1 military unit. They will be distributed to nearby regions, and in some cases they might be sold if you have slave markets, or even some of them might be executed. So let's play this decision, and next round in this region some of the slaves will be sent to nearby regions. Now I have 6 of them. If I will play next round, you will see an event. The numerous slaves in Macedonia threatened the lives of rich citizens, and Macedonia decided to disperse some of them to the surrounding regions. So now, if I go here, you can see I have only 4 slaves, and the rest was distributed around. So here I have 1 more, and here also 1 more. So this is the easy way of distributing slaves, but you don't always have this decision, and it only applies to the nearby regions. But if you will fight more battles, slaves will still come to your capital and they will grow fast. So from where the slaves are coming from, I will show you some example. Last round there were 2 battles. So if I go to the ledger battles, you can see that I was attacked by Epirus and I won the battle, and also we were attacker for the independent region. And if the battle happens, sometimes you might capture some slaves. If I hover my capital, you can see that region Macedonia is receiving 1 slave after a battle in Epidamia, and also 1 slave after a battle in Mygdonia. So I received 2 slaves this round. Now I have 2 more than previous round. So if you are fighting many battles, you might expect that some of the soldiers or people in the conquered regions will be captured and sent to your capital, because by default all slaves are sent to your capital. But can they be sent somewhere else? Yes, they can. And for that reason, you might need slave markets. In some regions, you will be able to build a building called slave market. By default, it produces some money and increase decadence, but it has a special property. If you build one of them, your nation will be able to gather and sell slaves. And location of such slave market is very important, because if there is a battle, 10 regions from any slave market, those slaves might be sent to the slave market instead of your capital. If there are more slave markets in that range, the slave will be distributed randomly to one of the slave markets within 10 regions from the event where the battle happened. Or there is other way how you can get slaves. Some factions can raid their neighbors, usually tribal factions. So let's check it. Here I am playing a faction that can issue the raid order, so the armies have this raid option, which allows them to attack a random nearby region and raid them. It means that I don't conquer the region, but you can see the smoke. They saw a mighty invasion of my faction, and after crushing the local militia, some pillaging and murders followed. And then in my capital, I can see that because of this raid, we have received one slave. So any battles or raids can give you slaves. And let's go back to Macedonia. In this region, I have built a slave market. So now this region can have more slaves, but slave market unlocks something called slave decisions. The more slave markets you own, the higher the chance that some nationwide decisions regarding slaves might appear. And to check them, you need to go to your nation panel, decisions, and here you can see we have decision slave markets. Let's click it. And now, thanks to our slave markets, we can decide what to do with our slaves. We can buy more slaves and pay money and buy up to 4 slaves from merchants because, for example, you would like to build more buildings or you need to speed up your constructions, or we might sell some slaves, but no more than 10, and you will get 100 money for each population sold. In this case, nearly 1000, and they will disappear and I will not have to relocate them. Or the third option, I can disperse up to 10 slave population from regions with at least 3 slaves. So if you have a problem with slaves, it's good to build at least one slave market to have such nice decisions. But there is also another one, and here you can see slave status and freedmen laws. In this case, we have different options. We can improve slaves' rights. It will permanently decrease unrest of our slaves by 1, but there is 25% chance per slave. But if we do it, the regions where you have slave markets, they might have a penalty of 5 to loyalty and commerce for 20 rounds, because regions where we have slave markets are really slave-oriented, and if you are improving slave rights in your nation, they are not happy. So good to know. You can also reduce slave rights, which will increase permanently unrest of your slaves by 1, and they will work harder, so you will get plus 10% of food and infrastructure for 12 rounds, which is also good. So as on this image, you can simply make their life harder, but they will work also harder. Third option is the freedmen laws. So if you have governmental buildings, there is 50% chance if they are in unrest that they will return to the normal conditions, or if they are not in unrest, there is 50% that a slave can be converted into a normal citizen. But of course, regions where you have slave markets will be unhappy and they will lose 10 loyalty. And fourth option, incite foreign slaves to revolt. So each foreign region bordering your nation that has slaves has 35% chance of being in unrest or revolt if they are already in unrest. And you need to pay for that. So this is quite a good option if you plan to attack your neighbor and he has a lot of slaves bordering with your nation. You can cause a lot of problems to them. So those are nationwide decisions that you can obtain if you have slave markets, and the more you have, the higher the chance to get such decisions. But let's talk about the unrest. Here you can see that your population also have some base unrest, and it depends on their ethnicity. If they are Hellenic, they have only 2 unrest, but slaves have 50% higher unrest. So in this case, instead of 2, they have 3. But in case of, for example, Balkanic slave, their unrest is 6. And in case of Germanic slaves, it's even worse. As you can see in this table, some nations cause more unrest and other nations are completely disloyal and they think only about revolting. Also, if you are fighting with other faction and you have slaves from their ethnicity, they can also decrease the loyalty much more and even revolt. So here you can see that there is 7% each round that they can revolt, and this region is in unrest. To handle the situation, you can send soldiers and they will decrease the chance for unrest, but also you can play a regional decision, suppress unrest. In this case, if you have soldiers in the region which is in unrest, you can play suppress unrest, and next round the situation should improve. Sometimes there is a martial law introduced and it's helping to reduce the revolt risk. And the revolt risk increases when the loyalty is below 50, and it really can increase if the loyalty is below 25. And also bordering on independent regions increase the revolt risk, especially if they are rebel units nearby. Also they might increase revolt risk in your region. And worth to mention that the more population you have, the more unhappy they can be. So even if those are my original Hellenic citizens, they have unrest 4. And those guys have unrest 3 and here unrest 2. So the more you have, the more unhappy they will be, and the more the loyalty might be a problem in your empire. But there is one way how you can mitigate the unrest. You can allocate people to culture. Please check what will happen with loyalty if I will move those citizens to the culture. Loyalty increase from 14 to 21 because of the welfare. Because welfare we receive from the culture production in our region, and it can be up to 1/3 of our base regional loyalty. So plus 30 in this case could be achieved from welfare. So adding more people to culture is also a way how you can increase your loyalty and mitigate the unrest from slaves. Here is less visible because we are in unrest, but for example here 72, I will move them here, 75, 76. You can see it become green. And above 75, the region is safe and it will never leave your nation, which is important, especially for factions like Macedonia, because they are Diadochi and there are special rules. If they are losing, some regions might join other faction if they are unhappy with what you are doing. So loyalty above 75 is very important to not lose regions. And regarding slaves, they are more productive only in the first 2 rows. So normal citizen, I can assign them anywhere, but slaves, you can see 5 productivity in a food production, 5 for infrastructure, but only 2 in the money section and plus 3 in the culture. So they are mostly needed for the physical work. And also they increase the building slots. So the more you have, the more building slots you might get. And sometimes early game, they might be really helpful to speed up the development of your regions. But later you need to decide where to build slave markets to control better their distribution. Okay. I think you could learn something regarding slaves. I hope that you don't have too many of them. And here you can check how many slaves and how many slave markets you have. Let's open Friedman Law's decision. Thank you for watching and see you later.